freedom. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a free human being? To me, that means that I own myself. I make the decisions on what goes into my body. I make decisions for my body. No one else does. It means that when I work an honest hour and get an honest day's pay or an honest hour's pay, that whatever I earn from that is 100% mine. That it's not to be voted or taken away by some social contract which I never signed, or to be taken for things which I don't agree with. War. I don't necessarily disagree with abortion, but I do not agree that you should force people to pay for it. That should come out of your own damn pocket. There are many things, like what medicines I put into my body, what medicines I don't put into my body. If you think you're free, don't pay or you think you own your property, here, we'll do a property test here. Don't pay your property taxes, see what happens to the property that you believe you own. Don't pay your taxes and see if you're free. Basically, indentured servitude is being born into owing because of somebody else in your bloodlines, poor choices, or even their good choices. It might just be circumstance. However, but basically saying that because I'm born, that I have to give X amount of the fruit of my labor into a system which is corrupt, failing, has been caught on numerous occasions embezzling, robbing, stealing, murdering, killing. It's basically a cartel that is voted in by 51%, which of that 51%, they believe that they have the right, because of some ideology or moral high ground, that they know what's best for me and they know what's best for my earnings. It's kind of like this, like I don't have kids, but yet a certain amount of my money goes to pay for schools, which is a failed system and, quite frankly, an indoctrination into nationalism or into a dumbing down of a society who's smart enough to push the button, however not smart enough to question why. It's an education on how to pass tests, how to recite and remember, which is not an education. It's not teaching people to free think. If we had a free thinking society, we wouldn't be in the boat that we are. What we have is a group think society where large groups get together and then try to dominate other smaller groups, which is, quite frankly, obscene. So when somebody asks me if I'm free or is America free, I have to look at the fact that we have the largest prison population on the planet, that people are going to jail for smoking a weed which goes into their body, which is their own damn business, and if they're not hurting anybody, kind of no victim, no crime, why are they in jail? Why are my tax dollars being made to pay for this? Why? When we have all the statistics out there about how many people die versus marijuana versus prescription pills. I think prescription pills beat out heroin and cocaine combined. So when you look at the reality of what's going on in our society today, basically we're being forced at gunpoint to pay for things that we have moral objections to. And when I say at gunpoint, that's exactly what it is. If I refuse to pay my taxes, I will be subpoenaed to to go to court, to stand in front of a judge who I am supposed to honor and bow to with the rising when they enter the room, which is a sign of their superiority or their authority over me, which is another contract I never signed. But so basically somebody comes and tells you you have to go to this because you haven't paid for your taxes. If you refuse to do that, eventually they're going to send the law to your door. And eventually when they come to your door, if you refuse to go to the jailing or imprisonment, which they're going to subjugate you to, they will use force. And that force will escalate. So the more that you resist, the further that will go, ultimately to your death. So in what free society by any stretch or any means, or what moral high ground can someone say that I'm going to take from you and give to this person and I'm willing to kill you for it and still hold any kind of morality or moral ground? To me, it's as simple as this. You've got your right-wing crazy bastards, religion this, religion that, and blah, blah, blah. And hey, that's great for them if that works, but it doesn't need to be opposed upon me. And then you have the other side, which are these ridiculous statists who, despite all the failings in government and despite all the history and all their so-called education, can't put the reality together that the system has failed and that voting really doesn't change shit. Basically, you're electing somebody who is already bought and owned by a corporation, and you're spending your money and you're voting them in, and then they do a little bit of what they said just to keep you appeased, and the rest of the time they're voting along with the status quo. That's why people today say there's no difference between the right and the left except for a few minute details. A little bit of welfare here and a little less over there. You name it, that's about the difference. In the meantime, we're all being robbed. How many trillions of dollars went to war this year alone? How many people died? And as if you do not think that you are ruled, then let's look at this. More people were killed in the United States by police officers than in all the wars that we have going on right now. So think about that for a second. Think about the arming of our police. Think about how they're militarized. Think about those things. What is that for? That's for the use upon the people. So as you keep voting and keep believing your ideology to be the better one, whether you're on the right or the left or in the middle or wherever the hell you are, and you keep thinking that you are absolutely right, and that because you are absolutely right, you can decide for the next person, and you can talk about freedom and patriotism and all you want all day long, but the reality is that you're willing to kill to get what you want. You're no better than some extremist Muslim who's willing to kill for what he wants, or some extremist right-wing or an extremist left-wing who's willing to kill for whatever they want. All of you, by virtue of voting and propping this system up, are murderers. You kill, and you act like you don't. You kill by vote. And so when somebody asks me if I'm free or if I believe in freedom, I ultimately believe in freedom. I ultimately believe that I don't have the right to decide for you what's best for you. The only time that I can interfere in your goings on would be if the minute that your stuff starts to interfere with my freedom. Then we have a problem, which we could mediate. We could come to a decision without involving somebody, some corrupt politician, to come down and jail the both of us for a disagreement. However, in this society, we seem to have this groupthink, this basic reality that people believe in that isn't real. It's not the reality. It's basically what MSNBC or Fox News or this or that, both groups battling it out, while at the same time we have Fukushima, NDAA, whistleblowers being, prosecuted at an extremely high rate. We have Guantanamo still open. We have the Patriot Act. We have the NSA who's spying on us, violating our constitutional rights, and nobody does anything. And if you don't think that this got passed by both parties, then you're sadly mistaken. The only difference between what they're doing and what you're doing, well, there isn't a difference. By virtue of you believing that you own somebody and that you can take the fruits of their labor, you're basically part of that system and you're just as bad. The only thing is you like to keep your little hands clean by saying that, oh, you didn't do that or you didn't do this, but you did by your vote. Your vote. By voting a leader or a ruler, whatever you want to call them, by continuing to vote people to rule over us, you are a party to this. And you're just as guilty in my book. So when I talk with both sides about this and that, I think you're both crazy. You have no understanding and no moral grounds on any level to argue or debate anything. Basically, at the end of the day, you're both okay with imposing a gun to someone's head to get what you want, because that's what you believe might makes right. And you can sit there and say you care about the children or you care about the this or you care about the that, but ultimately you really don't, because you're willing to kill somebody to get what you want. And there is no morality, there is no conscience involved in that. There is no try this. When you want something done in this country, why don't you go out and do it yourself? Why don't you volunteer your time, 1 day a week to give back to your community, as opposed to having me pay 30 to 60% of everything I earn. I get a paycheck. They take the money out for the taxes there. I go to the store, I get taxed there. I buy this, I get taxed there. I get taxed on everything. So what are you really left over? It's an outrageous tariff. It is the true definition of slavery. The modern slave pays to be a slave. And if you can't wrap your brain around that, it's time to pick up a book and look at what's going on in the world and look at what we are doing to ourselves. Because if you ever want peace or you believe in it on any level, it has to start out with the natural rights of a person to own themselves, because everything else is a bunch of bullshit. So hopefully you got something out of this. If you didn't, whatever. But the point being that you don't own me. Now what you can do is force me, and I pay my taxes simply because I don't want to be shot. That is a slave. That is the definition of a slave. I wish more people would stand up and say, hey, you know what, we're not going to pay for this. I'm not going to pay for abortions if you don't believe in fucking abortions. If you believe in murder, why would you fucking put into that? On any level of ground. So basically what it is that everybody has moral ground until there's a price to pay for it. But the reality is that if you're paying into the system, you're part of the problem, and that includes myself. So it's time to wake up, America. Time to be free and start acting free and actually be free. The definition means mind your own goddamn business and let everybody else do with their bodies as they fucking please. It's not your place to decide for them. And at the same time, it is not your place to make tax dollars go to that or to basically be willing to murder a person to take their money. It's called theft. Any way you look at it. I never signed a social contract. Most people never did sign a contract. It's basically by birth, which is indentured servitude, which is slavery. So in your enlightened ideologies, take a fucking second to take a look at what that really is and how that's enforced. Because any ideology that has any motive of good in it or has good in it does not need to be forced at gun's point. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I haven't made a video for a while, so this one's pretty sloppy. I'm just kind of making it as I sit here. Just felt like doing it. So wake the fuck up, America, because we're all slaves. Thanks.